Hey yo, it is 93 degrees out right now, and it is very warm. And that's not really as important as I am out of ground parts for the moment. So, we're going to talk about my CT90 today. This guy. This guy right here. This is my CT90. It is a 1967 CT90, mostly, kind of, sort of. The frame and gas tank and wheels and handlebar are a 1967 CT90. The rest of it I've kind of redone. And one of the things I need to do today is pull an oil cooler off that is leaking everywhere, and yeah, figured that might be a good chance to kind of go through the break, show you what I have, show you kind of what I want to do to it eventually, where it's at now, that sort of thing, kind of talk about one of my little previous projects many years ago. So that's just gonna stay how it is. So like I said, 1967. First got this 6 or 7 years ago. There's a guy one town over that was selling 3 different bikes. There's a 1965 CT200, 67 CT90, and a 68 CT90. None of them ran. 2 of them were half buried in mud. All of them were in a barn, exposed to elements, whatever. So I have a picture somewhere of the day they came home. All 3 of them loaded on the trailer, so I'll shove that in here, I guess. From there, took bits and pieces from all of them to try and make kind of one complete running bike, which I managed to do. There's one good engine that wasn't locked up. The CT200 engine is an older push rod, completely different than a 90. But the 67 frame, the one that I kept, had leading link suspension. It had the original CT90 motor. It was just really worn out. So I got that up and running again. Rode around for a few days that fall, and then decided that was going to be my winter project that year. I was living in a 2nd story apartment, so working on it, took it all apart at a storage unit, loaded it into my truck, and then carried it into my apartment piece by piece, which was kind of fun. I don't know, I think I have a few photos I could probably throw in of kind of that whole process too. But it was at that point that I painted the whole thing, replaced some, like the headlight, all my headlight shrouds were cracked, so I actually got rid of the stock speedometer, put an LED bar on there. I actually did a little bit of a 12-volt conversion. I'll show that in a little bit. And took the stock 6-volt CT90s, put it through step-up converter to 12-volt, and ran 12-volt light bar, and there's a running light and a brake light back here on the back of this rack. From there, finished it, rode it around for a little bit, and then started having issues with the motor. Couldn't really get it above like 35, 40. And what I boiled it down to, I think, was kind of a condenser issue. And the stock condenser on those was a really weird one. You could find them online, but they're like $100 a piece, and I just wasn't worth it for a 50 or 60-year-old motor, 50-year-old motor, something like that. So 2 years ago, I think, was when I did it. I got rid of the CT90 motor, and I bought a Piranha YX 140. Put that in, redid the entire wiring harness, got new grips, mirrors, throttle, switchgear, and just had a blast for a while. There's a video I put out, God, years ago, 2 years ago, maybe 3, of me just riding around on it for like 45 minutes. The video's bad because it pointed too low. The audio's bad because it's just my helmet, but that's up here if you want to take a listen to that. Might be interested. But yeah, did that, and then it kind of sat for a while. Bought a oil cooler to put on it because the YX140 is kind of borderline on if you need one or not, and days like today where it's 93 or so, it gets screaming hot. The engine itself gets hot, the exhaust is right next to you, the whole thing just ends up being really, really warm. So put that on, and it ended up leaking from everywhere that was possible. There's seams on either side, all of the fittings leaked, like it was a mess. So lesson learned, don't buy the cheapest eBay oil cooler that you can find. So someday I'll put a better one in, but for now I just want to ride it again, so we're going to take the oil cooler off, and then I'll show you some more bits of the bike as we do that. Oil cooler time. Unscrewed the oil cooler from the bracket, which I welded that bracket on to the skid plate, which is a stock skid plate, which is kind of cool. Survived however many years. So that's a bummer that I decided to weld that bracket on rather than doing something less permanent. That's okay, that can be grinded off sometime later. Let's see, so this YX140 I put in is kind of nice and a good upgrade from a 90cc motor. It's 140 cc's. They make YXs in all sorts of sizes. I think there's like Daytona ones you can get up to like 200 and something, 4 valve heads, whatever. This is a 2-valve 140. One of the things I like about it is that it is an undersquare. Has a really wide piston to get that 140cc. It's not a really narrow one with a long stroke. It's a wide one with a short stroke, which kind of means that it's still a really torquey engine. One of the things that CT90s are famous for is their dual range transmission that they had, and so when I went to this aftermarket engine, I lost that. But this 140 is torquey enough that it will still climb a tree in first gear, which was kind of fun. First gear, like, you're shifting out of it by 7 miles an hour maybe. It's pretty low. It's Piranha brand. It's not just a straight Lifan or anything like that, so who knows what that'll mean for longevity of it, but for now it's been good. It did come with a full wiring harness. It came with a VM22 Mikuni carburetor. It is probably a copycat knockoff, but it does say Mikuni and it does say VM22. And that carb's been flawless for me so far. It took a little bit to get it jetted correctly, but from there it's been great. Bottom mount electric start, which has been so nice. I don't have to kickstart this, which has been phenomenal. Yeah, one of the other nice things that we're dealing with now is it came with the oil cooler head plate already on there. A lot of the YX motors you can put aftermarket coolers on, but you end up having to buy this head plate and kind of figure out how to plumb it in yourself, whereas this one came with that on there, and then it came with just this bypass hose pre-installed, and we're gonna reinstall that and hope that it doesn't leak everywhere. Let's see, other things about this motor. It fit pretty easily. It wasn't the most straightforward swap. The top engine mount fit fine, except for a little bit of clearancing and grinding to get it to go in. Not a ton. There's just a little touch with an angle grinder. But the bottom mount doesn't exactly line up. There's a few people out there that make adapter plates for lining that up, and that's what I ended up doing. That also took a little bit of fiddling to get it to line up correctly, but that's fine. It all fits now, which is the important part. See, reused the stock brake pedal, which is nice, but I did have to go to aftermarket pegs, and these pegs mount actually in a very similar way to how I did the Grom's skid plate in the last video, which is kind of how I knew how much force the bolt holes could take, is because I did them already, or used them already on a different one. I don't remember what exhaust this is. I don't remember if it's the 90 or the 200. I think it's the 90. But I was actually able to make this work with the YX140, which is honestly one of my favorite things about this bike, was that I could keep the stock exhaust. I did have to narrow it a little bit where the port matches, or the port meets up. I had to shrink the flange a little bit, and then I had to make some spacers because it's a little bit recessed on the head. But aside from that, it was screwed on and it was good to go. Same gasket, same whatever. So that was a fun part of it too. Cool. Well, that's all nice and tight. Let me show you some other parts. The other parts. Words are hard. I'm actually going to stay out of this for a while so you can see the bike better. Let's see, some of the things I did. So I mentioned that this came with a full engine harness, but I had to wire in all the lights myself, the speedometer, that sort of thing myself. So, let's see, 3D printed a plate for the key, which goes in there. Let's see, this switch does the lights, so that's brake light and headlight go on with that. You can run without them if your battery's going low. I wired it in that way because I really wasn't sure how much output this stator had, knowing that, you know, it's meant for a dirt bike, which might not always have lights and running lights, whatever. So kind of did it that way. Rectifier's in here, and then kind of a way too thick main power cable running along there. I was able to keep the stock heat shield, which is fun. I don't have this one anymore, which is a bummer. This is where the other heat shield was, and so I just never painted it originally. Let's see, heading back a little bit, have some RFY eBay special shocks on there. They were cheap. I don't remember the specific model, but I want to say that they came off of some kind of an ATV or UTV. They're a little stiff, which is fine. It happens. You can see I haven't used all the travel or anywhere close to all the travel based on where that bump stop rubber is. Yeah, let's see. Let's go kind of up above. Actually, let's go behind the bike. Underneath here is an original rack off of the 67. A lot of the CT90s had a really wide rack, but the 67 had a narrower one underneath that the wider one bolted to, and that narrow one's pretty cool. So I kept that. There's just some fender washers and bolts kind of going from the underside of that rack up through to my little Walmart special milk crate. Bought a long one, cut it down in size, reassembled it, and it holds a good amount of things pretty easily. Let me turn on the electrics. So there's my little brake light in there. It's just an LED strip, and it is a running and brake light, so the brake lights are functional, which is nice and legal. There we go, turn that off. Alright, so here's a better view of this milk crate. Risk happy on there, kind of the motto of the bike. On the side I put a little Endurstand pouch on there because I think it looks cool. mostly for shits and gigs. And then here's the actual milk crate itself. A six pack fits perfectly in here. Almost like I designed it, but it was just a happy coincidence. So behind this strap and under this cover, it's a little tight, is the battery for the electric start. I went with way too big of a battery. I think this is a 7 whatever, YTX7, BTX7, VTX7, something 7. And I probably could have gone with like a 5. So I have the Grom battery. I replaced it with a lithium ion, and I may end up switching it in here. I 3D printed little cubbies that fit in here too. So we have sockets and an extra spark plug and some zip ties on that side, and then like ratchets and a wrench and sockets and let's see, ratchets, wrench, hex heads, all that sort of thing on that side. So that's my milk crate. It is functional. It works great. Shout out Upshift Online for the volley straps, whatever they are. Little Noco charger hanging out. Let's see, on this side we have some kind of cool things. I was able to keep the original foiled CT90 logo, or Honda logo, which I think is pretty cool. It has like Honda motors on the wing, which is a little interesting. Just kind of a different logo you don't see all the time. Let's see, chain guards, original, just painted. This kickstand, you'll notice I have a block of wood under it. And that's because that kickstand is cool. It is JDM aftermarket. I think it's EG Works. Yeah, EG Works on this chrome here. But that's really cool. It just leans really, really far over when it's on the kickstand, so I usually have wood under it. Let's see, the bike is still a semi-automatic, four-speed semi-auto. So it still has the centrifugal clutch where you basically don't need, well, you can see on the lever, I don't have a clutch on there. Which is still fun, so it still kind of keeps that just like twist and go spirit, I guess you could call it, of the CT90. Like I said, VM22 carb on there with a uni filter. So the original, well, this 67 CT90 had the airbox originally pointed forward and then going up through this little boot right here, and then the filter was actually where that black cover is. And had to ditch that when I went to this engine, which is fine. The carb facing forward was a little bizarre, and then freed up some space where my legs go. Let's see, that's about it for this side, I think. You'll notice I don't have the side covers. Someday I'd love to put those back on. And that might be part of maybe the next phase of what I do on this bike. Last thing I kind of want to talk about on here is this front end, because it is definitely not stock. Like I said, the original had, well, at least the 67 did, had leading link front suspension, so little baby shock absorbers that bottomed out when I sat on them. They were not easily rebuildable, not easily repairable, and I needed something kind of functional. So what this is a CB125 front end, at least the forks. And triple are CB125. It's from, I think this one was like a 1972. Got it on eBay. Unfortunately, my fork boots have disintegrated, just bad reproduction ones. And then there's springs on the outside and fluid on the inside. So a little unique there as well. You can see this white thing is, maybe you can't, maybe that's too far away, but there's springs on the outside, which is kind of cool. With the 125 front end, this is actually a you might be able to see it, you might not. This is a C100 brake hub, so original CT90 wheel. Let's put it over here. The CB125 has the brake stay on the opposite side of what the CT90 had. And so CT90 wheels you can flip around, and then I got a C100, I don't remember what year that was from. but a C100 brake drum and speedometer gear that's in there as well for it. The only thing I had to do to make it match up is there's a little aluminum bar right here that I had to shave to fit into that stay, but it works really well. They are drum brakes, but I can lock up front and rear no problem, and haven't had to touch them since I installed everything, so that's been nice at least. Supermoto, this is an Acerbis, whatever. Supermoto front fender. It looks absolutely ridiculous, but I think it's hilarious and I love it. This is probably the most polarizing part of this entire build, more so than the engine. As soon as I tell people that the old engine was just tired even after a rebuild, because I did put a new piston rings, everything was in spec set perfectly, but was still chasing some weird issues. As soon as I tell people that, they're like, oh yeah, cool, whatever, put in a 140, go 55 or 60 miles an hour if you want to. They're like, fine, whatever. But then they see this front fender and they're like, oh my god, that is the worst thing I've ever seen. And I don't really disagree with them, I just think it's hilarious and I love it. Like I said, I did put LED light bar on there. It does work pretty well. And then, yeah, speedometer is another one of my favorite parts. I'll show you that here in a second. So stock Honda, which is 2240 to 60 RPMs, like a lot of other Honda motors are. I couldn't find a speedometer that only went to, like, 60 or 70 miles an hour. So this CT140 tops out at 160 miles an hour on the speedometer, and that just tickles me in the right way. I think it's hilarious. Let's see, cheapo throttle housing and grips and brake. This switchgear came with the bike, and like I said, electric start, which is amazing. And then just a cheapo bar end mirror. Hello, hi. Bar end mirror on there as well. So that is my 1967-ish CT90. Once I have the Grom done, do you ever finish a project? Maybe this winter. This is actually one of the projects I'd love to tackle again. From various things, the paint's pretty worn down. At one point I had a fuel leak in the tank. This is the gas tank, by the way. And so that kind of ate through the paint underneath, but the clear coat actually held, and so there's just kind of brown bubbles under there. But what I'd love to do is completely take the whole thing apart again, film all that. I have the wiring harness that I made has wires in there for turn signals that I'd love to put on, make it a little bit more legal. I really want to strip the frame down and change the color. It is white right now. I'd really love to go to like a cement gray. I think would look kind of cool. Yeah, and just kind of give it a once over. It's been a while since I have done that. And let's be honest, I need a winter project, so we'll do it that way. We're not going to go for a ride today. Like I said, I did have a little bit of a gas leak at one point, and so just out of caution, I did reline it, but out of caution I don't store it with gas in it, and filling it up and draining it each time is kind of a pain in the ass, so I don't really feel like doing that today when it's 93 degrees out and hot. I have some other videos of me riding around. I'll put one right here that is that 45-minute or so long video where I really go through and talk about it and tell you all my thoughts on it and all of that. But this one now is also just me zipping up and down the street on it pretty much right after I put that 140 engine in and got it all running. So yeah, some of you had been asking for this video, so for those of you that had, hope you got all your questions answered. If you do still have questions, comment below. I'm happy to answer any of those. If you're here for the CT90 content, get subscribed. Like I said, this winter I would love to rebuild this, tear it down, really go in depth onto what it is and how I did it and all that. Show you all the bracketry and all that fun stuff that was really exciting to figure out. If you're here for the Grom content, please stay subscribed. I promise there's more Grom content coming. I should have parts being delivered tomorrow as well as at the end of this week. There may be a couple week gap between videos. I'm actually out of town. Well, probably by the time this comes out I'll be back in town, but there'll be a couple weekends where I can't film, so there's that. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Hopefully it's cooler outside and we can actually go ride. So see you then. That's weird. I don't like that. I don't like see you then. That's the video. I'll see y'all later. Bye.